Sorry, there's never a good way to interrupt everyone, so good evening. I would like to, as well as the board, would like to welcome everyone and call to order the September 12th, 2022 regular meeting of the Willoughby-Eastlake City Schools Board of Education. This meeting is being held in accordance with Section 3313.15 of the Ohio Revised Code. Mr. Tarnello, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Boxler?
Here.
Mr. Reedy?
Here.
Mr. Oskus?
Here.
Mrs. Menser?
Here.
Mrs. Bear?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Will you please rise to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We would like to welcome everyone to our meeting this evening. To ensure that all are aware of the way these meetings operate, we want to share the following with everyone. 1, prior to this evening, each board member has received for their review and consideration the agenda and materials associated with each agenda item for the board's approval. Board members have the opportunity to call the superintendent and treasurer for information concerning agenda items and to request, if needed, additional information. Board members are not permitted, per the Ohio Meetings Act and Sunshine Laws, to conduct conversations regarding board business outside of the public meeting. Tonight will be the first time in which we as a board can conduct, as a whole, conversations related to all items on the agenda. This meeting's agenda is always available through the district's website for public viewing prior to the board meeting. Community members can always email the board with questions or come and participate in the public comment portion of our meeting. Public comment provides an opportunity for the community to address the school board directly. To participate in public comments, participants would sign up before the meeting at the lectern. When signing up, you are provided a copy of our public participation policy. Participants are asked to abide by those requirements. As the meeting progresses, you will see the board discuss items and not vote. Those items are marked with an asterisk in the agenda. These items are a part of our consent calendar. To ensure our meetings move along, we vote to approve all of these items at the end of the meeting. Other items without an asterisk are voted on individually for a variety of reasons which are outlined in our policies. Lastly, the way in which we conduct our meetings is outlined in those policies. You can find those on the Board of Education tab on the district's website. We'll now move on to our agenda. We will go ahead and do item 1D, oath of office to be appointed to the board member. Mr. Tarnello.
Now, he was officially sworn in last meeting, but we want you to all see his pretty face one more time. Make it video official.
Provide him an official ceremony.
Your angelic voice. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as a board member of the Willoughby-Eastlake Board of Education to the best of your ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is chosen and qualified? If so, please say I do.
I do.
Congratulations.
Welcome, Mr. Reedy.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to item 2A, the approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve our agenda?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve our agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Menzer. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Boxler. Discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Charnello?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Reedy?
Yes.
Mr. Oskus?
Yes.
Mrs. Menser?
Yes.
Mrs. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
We'll now move on to item 3A, Community Engagement, Board President Q&A. Now, we had 2 meetings in the month of August, August 8th and August 11th. There were many questions, so we're taking a slightly different approach to Board President Q&A today. The board had split up investigating, researching, and compiling answers, and the response will be shared by the board to the community today. And when we have an abundance of questions to ensure there's adequate time and thorough investigation, the board as a whole will provide responses. Mr. Roskis, I believe you're starting us off this evening.
Yes, just let me bring it up here. Just have to find the attachment. Okay, so our first public participant at the August 8th meeting was Beth Teig, and she noted that there are many questions from the community for the Board of Education, and she did not ask a specific question, but the Board of Education will gladly answer these questions as they're received, and we will refer any questions to the administration to ensure a complete and accurate response. Our next public participant was Patrick Justberger. His question was, what else did the board consider in the review of the budget? And he asked for a rationale as to why those listed were the right items to cut. The superintendent and treasurer reviewed the entire list of cuts considered by the board during the levy reduction presentation shown later in that meeting. Further, the board reviewed these proposed reductions at a work session of 3 hours, which was held on July 20th, and we considered multiple scenarios. Each line item was evaluated. While input was provided by the superintendent and treasurer, as they are the subject matter experts in the daily operations of the district, the board completed extensive due diligence, including reviewing the number of students affected, staff members impacted, programming that might be reduced, and how safety and security would be affected. Safety and health were our priorities, such as maintaining K-8 busing. The second most important consideration was the number of students impacted. How to maintain as much programming as possible was also a critical rationale in our discussions. Dr. Thompson was also consulted as necessary to ensure that we would still meet state minimum standards as well as contractual obligations of our collective bargaining agreements. The number of students that might leave the district due to reductions was also considered. Our next public participant was Jean DeSantis. Mrs. DeSantis inquired as to whether Mr. Charnello and his assistant, Michelle Peters, received raises. One second, sorry. Mr. Charnello's contract was expiring in July of 2023. Within 18 months of expiration, boards and their administrators often meet to discuss future plans for contract renewal. The treasurer's contract was able to be discussed for renewal beginning in February of this year. Falling in line with standard procedures for most boards, we met with Mr. Charnello and extensively discussed many areas of his performance, which essentially constituted a verbal review. The board had also completed an evaluation in November of 2021. Sorry. The board conducted many conversations and reviews with Mr. Charnello and extensively reflected on his contributions and value to the district. We unanimously agreed that Nick was the right person to help drive our district into the future and can work to monitor spending, reduce expenditures, which he has to the tune of over $4 million, and to be creative in designing ways to navigate the district out of the financial situation we find ourselves in. Although his contract renewal was not unanimously voted on, it does not discredit his ability and extensive contributions to the district. All board members participated in every minute of conversation regarding his contract renewal and evaluation, which occurred simultaneously. We are working to formalize his current evaluation. His new contract will go into effect on August 1st, 2023. The new contract includes an increased salary schedule, which the board believes is competitive and reflects Mr. Charnello's excellent performance and many contributions to the district. Mrs. Peters received a raise pursuant to the salary schedule negotiated by the Willoughby-Eastlake Classified Professionals Union. Our next participant was Aaron Reedy. He asked, if renewal levy does not pass, when would soy close? What about the rest of the cuts? He also wanted an update at the time about the Strategic Planning Committee. What would redistricting look like, and what would that entail? If the renewal levy does not pass, the School of Innovation would close in August of 2023. The majority of the rest of the cuts would not take effect until August 2023, except the elimination of middle school and ninth grade athletics, field trips, and a 10% reduction in building budgets, which could be enacted by the board in November of 2022. The Strategic Planning Committee, now the Community Advisory Committee, has met several times since then and is in the process of developing a mission statement and committee parameters in the type of committee, how often we will meet, who will chair the committee, etc. The focus of conversation has been on how to garner feedback from the community to help the board and administration make important decisions for the district's future. An important focus has also been improving community engagement and relations. The board would consider a redistricting study by an outside firm in the event of a renewal levy failure. The study would help suggest and identify options for the board to consider. It would be premature to suggest what changes might occur at this time. I think number
Number 5 was me, yes. So our next participant was Mr. Dale Fellows. He made mention and made more suggestions and questions that we as a board need to better equip ourselves to understand the needs of the community, to take ourselves out into the community to become more abreast of their needs and wants, and to ensure that we are following and reviewing our policies and embracing leadership and role modeling what we expect from the top down. He also suggested that we avoid making decisions related to CRT and social emotional learning, and stress that we be tolerant and accepting and open to others' ideas. The board completely agrees with these sentiments. We are working and making strides to best learn what our community needs. It's why the Strategic Planning Committee was birthed. It's moved into a community planning committee, and we as a board have actively discussed wanting to pursue other ways to engage the community. And we hope that we are able to have evidence-based decision-making in all that we do, and to work to evaluate how we operate as a district and provide proof of that excellence in the very near future with many different presentations. Additionally, on the 11th, Mr. Fellows spoke as well and specifically addressed me and essentially wanted to ensure that the discourse between administration and the board remained positive and to demonstrate the expectations that we have for those that report to us. The board itself has a very respectful, collaborative relationship. We have a very collaborative and respectful relationship with our administrators, and we will continue to foster that. With regard to decorum, while I am the presiding officer, I feel it appropriate, and one of the things that I learned was that in the event that any contentious conversations occur, a recess is always in order. And we as a board have discussed and decided that if contentious conversations occur in the future, that a recess would be called to provide opportunity for reflection before moving on into other things in the agenda. And that took care of number 5. Moving on to number 6.
Number 6, Nancy Morrow was our participant. She made some comments. She didn't have any specific questions. However, she mentioned that some people believe that the school levy was on the August primary ballot. She also noted that some people believe that bringing back masking will bring resentment if that would occur. She also said that enacting a diversity, equity, and inclusion curriculum would feel like a betrayal to the community. And she did comment that is not a state-mandated program. The board respects the concerns of the community, and we will continue to make efforts to improve community engagement. The board did approve a resolution at the regular July 11th, 2022 board meeting, placing the 10-year $4,745,186 renewal levy on the November 8th, 2022 ballot. The board must adhere to the Ohio Open Meetings Act and all of its deliberations and voting. There are no plans to return to mandatory masking. The board takes into consideration the recommendations of the Lake County General Health District in guiding decision-making related to student health. Willoughby-Eastlake Schools does not employ a diversity, equity, and inclusion-based curriculum or a curriculum based on critical race theory. Further, we do not offer professional development in these areas.
Our next speaker was Chris Kraniak, and she had concerns with regards to us listening to the community, really focusing on the hybridization of our programming and ensuring that nonprofits and for-profits stay out of the schools to enforce better education and to focus on getting the best teachers and programming. And our response as a board is we do have the best educators in Lake County, and we feel they deliver the best curriculum. And we as a board will support them wholly in their efforts, as they are the subject matter experts who are highly qualified to conduct and deliver education to our students. And that we as a board will continue to work to strike a balance to ensure that the community feedback is sought and shared in all decision-making moving forward.
Next up was Jamie Schatzman of Eastlake. Jamie came to ask about the levy and how the cuts might affect programs going into high school. She asked specifically about how high school athletics would be affected if we didn't have middle school programs. The students would still be able to play in rec leagues in the city for things like baseball and football, but other programs might have a decline in student participation. She was concerned with what would happen to kids if programs like music and art were removed from the schools, and the board shares her concerns. She said that she was working with the levy committee in order to pass the levy for the district so we would not have to cut the programs, and we appreciate her efforts in doing so. She asked that we provide the committee with accurate information in order to help answer people's questions, and we're happy to do that however we can. Next was Jamie Lavoris. And Jamie started by commenting about how great our teachers and staff are in the district. We would like to second that statement, and we appreciate her making it. In the event of a levy failure, since we would have an she also asked about the redistricting and clarifying things. Now, in the event of a levy failure, since we'd have an open building, we want to make sure that we are utilizing the resources the district has to the best of our abilities. She was asking about the term redistricting, which we had on the list for potential cuts. She was asking if we had any idea if that meant boundaries for students or closing buildings. If we would have to go down that road, we would hire an outside group to conduct a study of the district and report back its findings before we would make any decisions. It would be difficult at this time to say exactly what that would look like, but it could be any number of things. Kim Peoples expressed concerns over the cuts to the district if the levy failed. She commented that her family would consider leaving the district if all the cuts that were suggested happened, and was asking what would happen to the cities if more families were to follow suit by leaving the district. She stated that we need to think of the kids. I can state for a fact that everyone up here feels the same way in terms of thinking about the kids and supporting our teachers and staff. I can assure you that everyone up here is thinking the same thing, and we are working to hopefully not have to deal with that.
That covers the comments from August 8th. We'll now transition to the comments from August 11th.
Our first public participant at the August 11th meeting was Denise Verity. She commended the school board for its work, considering the difficult decisions that we have to make. She reminded everybody to be thankful and to be involved in the voting process, and she hopes we are able to find a positive and uplifting superintendent. She believes that the board should show mutual respect and, if necessary, apologize publicly. The board thanks Mrs. Verdi for sharing her comments and concerns, and we will continue to strive to work together as a board and with the administration and community to ensure the best possible educational experience for all of our students. Then our next participant on August 11th was Tony Siracusa. He did not have a question, but he did pose some comments. He did not support Mr. Thompson's comments towards Mrs. Menzer at the August 8th board meeting and does not support the response towards him. He would like the board to show more decorum in its proceedings. He suggests a break in the meeting and saying your piece in private. He doesn't want to see unanimous votes. He respects Mr. Boxler for bringing up how much board members make and offering to donate it back to the PTAs. He also believes that we need a new superintendent soon. The board respects Mr. Syracuse's opinions, and we will work towards more civil discussion in the future. We do welcome all board members to share their opinions and understand that sometimes we will not all be in agreement. Although we may approach issues from different perspectives, nevertheless, we all seek the betterment of the school district.
John Mara of Timberlake was asking about the COVID-19 recommendations from the Lake County General Health District and if the district would be following them or questioning them. At this point in time, we have not made any decisions to change anything. Any questions concerning the Lake County General Health District and their recommendations can actually be directed to them, and you can call them with any questions at 440-350-2543.
And I took the liberty of handling the next one, so.
Lastly was Erin West, and Erin came to introduce herself to the board as she had applied for the open board position. The board did have a chance to interview her, as well as the 35 other candidates who applied for the open position. We appreciated the introductions, and we know she is very active within our district on the Strategic Planning Committee and the Levy Committee, and we hope to be able to engage with her in the future on other projects as well.
Thank you. Mrs. Menzer, Mr. Reedy, you're up next meeting. We're trying to share the workload and also provide an opportunity for each board member to have an opportunity to speak in meetings. It's always just the presiding officer. So when and where appropriate, we'll be making sure that the community and the board has an opportunity to experience each other. We'll now move on to item 3B, community engagement, public comment. Mr. Charnello, who is our first speaker.
Jamie Schatzman.
Okay. We welcome community engagement. Just a reminder that we'll have our 3-minute timer up, and I'll just ask that at 3 minutes we end.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yell at me if I start to go over. Hi, my name is Jamie Schatzman, and I live at 35957 Lakeshore Boulevard in Eastlake. Today, I am here as the co-chair of the Willoughby-Eastlake Levy Committee. Since we are not a board-led committee and we receive no funding from the district, we have no obligation to report out to the school board. However, I'm here today to inform the board member of our plans to offer a forum for submitting questions through our website, www.supportweschools.org, and to ask for all of your help. Currently, we encourage people to visit supportweschools.org to obtain levy and voter registration information, to sign up to volunteer, and to donate. And we definitely need to continue doing those things, particularly attracting volunteers, but we also need to do a little bit more. Our small but mighty team is encountering lots of questions regarding this renewal levy, some of which are better answered by the district. To explain what I mean, we as a team can easily provide information about the levy. We can let voters know that issue 3 is not a new tax or a tax increase, and that voting yes on November 8th means that we avoid defunding our schools by nearly $5 million a year. We can relay that a yes vote is not a vote to increase the school's budget by any amount, but simply to maintain the current funding. We can also educate voters about the state subsidies in place that effectively provide taxpayers with a 12.5% discount, which will permanently go away if the renewal fails. And we can let people know which cuts the board approved on the August 8th meeting in the event of a failure, which eliminate things like high school busing, middle school and freshman athletics, elementary music, band, field trips, and the School of Innovation, to name just a few. But I'm also here to encourage the board to help us respond to the community members who have more specific questions about the way the district runs, the board's current and future priorities, and the details of when and how these cuts will be administered. Transparency is going to be key to overcoming any distrust and reducing the spread of misinformation. It's my opinion that if this renewal levy fails and our schools face massive cuts to rebalance a reduced budget, our whole community is going to suffer. Students will likely leave, young families will be more unlikely to move here, and businesses will find our cities less attractive. So on behalf of our committee, the Willoughby-Eastlake students, staff, and really our entire community, I urge you to respond to the best of your ability, as you've done today, to any questions our community sends your way from supportweschools.org. I believe that we share a similar goal to accurately respond to voters so that they can feel comfortable voting to keep the funding the same going forward. Thank you all for your support.
Thank you. Mr. Tarnello, our next participant.
Tony Siracusa.
Hello. I have always in the past defended the school board on social media when it has
Mr.
been accused.
Siracusa? You just-
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Tony Siracusa, 34303 Iris Lane, Eastlake. I've always in the past defended the school board on social media when it has been accused of such things as mismanagement, being yes men, hiding stuff, etc. I can no longer do this. I'd really hope that this new school board would be different. You campaigned that you would be transparent and that you were going to work for the kids to make their education better, but this is not true in the slightest. I have information that one of our school board members illegally found and used a district employee's username and password to access the administrative pages of PowerSchool. There is confidential information on these pages that are covered under FERPA, Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. This board member looked at 7 unknown pages of PowerSchool. It could have been any of your children's records. This person compromised personal, sensitive information that they had no right to access. A police report was generated in this matter. First of all, I'm demanding that this member resign immediately. This was illegal, immoral, and unethical. Ms. Bear, I sent you an email letting you know that I was planning to speak on this. You replied that you were aware of the matter and you had hired a third party to investigate. First of all, this person should have been censured immediately pending investigation. Second, all you have to do is look at the police report, Eastlake Police Report number 2200762, and they admitted they did it. What needs to be investigated? This happened back in April. If you were transparent, you should have told the community about it months ago. Legally, you should have informed the parents months ago that their personal information had been compromised under Ohio Revised Code. All this makes me wonder about this board's motives. You're supposed to be working for us and the kids, and now it just seems all political, and let's hide things and they'll blow over. Maybe it's just a power trip, and that's why you're not going for a new superintendent until next school year. How much has this school board spent in legal fees since January? I'd also like to know how Mr. Reedy was picked as our new school board member. I remember the 3 of you campaigning together, Bear, Boxler, and Reedy. How convenient that Mr. Reedy is now here. By the way, Mr. Reedy, I have no problem with you. I actually voted for you. Nick Brown was the next highest vote getter in the last election, and he did apply for an open seat, for this open seat. Why didn't he get the job? Did you eliminate candidates that were very qualified, such as lawyers or people with a financial background? Doesn't seem right to me, and I'm sure the rest of the community wonders that as well. I, for one, have no confidence in this board whatsoever, and all of you should resign. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on. Was there anybody else? We only had 2, right? We'll now move on to item 4A, board members' business, board discussion. So, to immediately address a concern, we have been advised by legal counsel until a full investigation has been finalized. There'll be no discussion of the investigation. So with that, we have a few other things that we need to discuss. I know that we've had a few meetings of the Strategic Planning Committee and its conversion to the, what's it called again now? The Community,
Community Advisory Committee.
do you mind providing a quick update for that?
So the Strategic Planning Committee, now called the Community Advisory Committee, by agreement of its members, the committee is working to develop a mission statement and the parameters of the committee, how often we will meet, the structure, and related items. We are looking to draft a model of our committee, and much of it is based off of the Westlake Citizens Advisory Committee, and we're hoping to provide a template to the board within a month or so.
Wonderful. Where did the idea come from for the Westlake Committee?
I think it was just through some research from some of the members of the committee, and we discovered that a lot of the guidelines and bylaws that they had established were very much in line with something we were looking towards. So.
Okay. Anything to add?
Westlake's committee has been around for 40 years, so we're thinking that any committee like that can have success in projects that they've done, really, we should be looking at.
Wonderful. What questions do we have? I know you and I birthed the idea of the Strategic Planning Committee, and I'm reminded of a quote that I read recently, and it's, you might have the best ideas in the world, but ultimately you have to test it until failure to see if it's the right way to go. And I love that it's kind of developed into what it is, because I think it's better than maybe what we intended. Okay. Mr. Reedy, do you have any questions about the committee outside of the questions you had previously asked?
No. How often are they in communication? I said no. Yes, I do. How often are they in communication with you two?
Last month, we met, I believe, a couple times. And then we actually just met earlier this evening, and then we're planning to review a template, and we've set a tentative meeting for early October. But the next step is to draft that template, and we're going to review that, and we may or may not have another meeting to go over that template, but that's our next step.
Do you know, have they been getting a lot of comments from the community or questions?
Right now, it's still, the discussions have been very much within the committee, but that's obviously a part of what the committee would like to do as it develops.
So it's my understanding that the direction that they're going is there'll be a community-led committee in which they would be able to kind of police themselves, come forth and ask and be a partner with the district.
It's still, I guess the format is still kind of being worked out.
Okay.
But I certainly, there will be a large community presence on the committee.
Okay. I look forward to future presentations. Another thing that we know that we needed to discuss was to debrief the process that we took as we onboarded and chose a new board member. So who would like to start, or would you like me to start? Me it is. So just to provide some clarity to the community, we had scheduled multiple days for interviews, communicated directly with the applicants, and scheduled the day that worked best for them. There was some rescheduling to best meet their availability. We met for 15 minutes with each candidate who arrived for their application interview. We did have a few that withdrew their application throughout the process, but we spent 15 minutes with them. We asked the same questions of each person. A variety of the questions really were focused on the things that we know that we as a board are working on, and provided an opportunity for them to ask us questions in return at the end. And I only speak for myself. I'll open the floor to the board. I think we learned a lot through having all of those conversations and them asking questions And I felt they provided a sense of, like, a good pulse on the community. They had a lot of questions about, what does it mean to be a board member? How many hours do you spend? What are you really focused on? How do you make an impact? What if you wanted to do this? Can you? And a lot of them expressed concerns, a lot of them expressed praise, and they gave ideas, and more importantly, almost every person expressed that they would love to, in any way possible, continue to have a relationship with the district. And what we did in return is, after we interviewed everybody, we narrowed it down to 4 top candidates for a variety of reasons, and we sent a, essentially, declination to the candidates who were not chosen for the second round of interviews, but encourage that we want and need to work with you in the future. We only had 1 board spot to fill, but we know that the wealth of knowledge and expertise and skill that these individuals brought was absolutely necessary to be harnessed, right? That was one of the things I think resonated with all of us, is that we wish we could work with everybody. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely.
So once we narrowed it down to the 4, we extended, please let us keep your information so we can reach out to you in the future. And we mean that sincerely. We know we need to look at policy. We know we have a superintendent search up and coming. We have a lot of really important things that we want as many insights as possible with. So we have this wealth of people who want to be engaged, who we know we could benefit from, and we want to continue to try to build relationships. So move on. We had another second round of interviews. That was another 15 minutes, and we asked 1 question of every person, of all 4. They were allowed 15 minutes to speak on their own accord and to say whatever they wanted, share whatever they weren't able to share before, ask questions, etc. And at the end of that, we kind of ran into a pickle. Does anybody else want to take over? You just want me to keep going? Keep on going. Okay. Just keep. That's what happens when I gave board president Q&A. Now everyone's like, it's your turn, Krista. Fair enough. So when we got to the final 4, we were split 2 for one candidate and 2 for another. And we thought it would be a quick, great, we interviewed them twice, we can move on. Nobody would move. This is the way boards work. We do not always agree. In fact, I think we disagree more often than we agree. However, the role of a board member is to find compromise and collaboration. So our first 2 individuals, who 2 felt very strongly about and 2 felt strongly about the other person, there was no headway to be made. So we looked at the remaining 2 candidates and discussed option 3 and 4. And don't worry, Mr. Reedy was fully informed of this prior to the meeting. We believe in complete transparency and honesty with one another, so he was informed of that. The first choice of every 4 board member up here was not chosen, because that's what boards do. And the most overreaching question and consideration that we considered was, do we have an individual who will absolutely, 100% of the time, see our kids first? And that was the biggest, most important driver in our decision-making. One question that was asked of us as a board is, what is something you learned being a board member? What is something I would need to know if I became a board member? And throughout all the interviews, I think we all came to a common consensus on a variety of things. But the most important thing was as follows. We are elected by the community. And when we campaign for community buy-in. The second you are sworn in, we are responsible to the community, and we take that burden seriously. At the same time, this board is the highest authority in the Willoughby-Eastlake district. The entire hierarchy and chain of command reports up to us. And our focus has to shift. And our charge is to take care of the employees, staff, and students first in our decision-making. Period. That is the hardest thing about being a board member, is having the community come here and question you every single day that you're doing it wrong or you made a decision, but knowing in your heart and in the discussions that we have that in reality, we are here for the teachers, the staff, and the students first. And sometimes the community has to be something that we consider second. That's why we were elected. That is why we are here. That is the hardest thing about being a board member, is knowing that your community elected you, but now you owe 100% of your efforts to the district and the community. And sometimes that sways. So we considered that, and at the end of it, we arrived and unanimously agreed upon Mr. Reedy to be the board member. So what would you like to add to that debrief?
I would just reiterate that the comments and ideas that were given during the interview process were phenomenal, and it was great to hear from everybody that applied.
It was a humbling experience, and we were honored to have the opportunity to meet with each and every individual, and everybody came with a wealth of knowledge and experience that this district could benefit from. We had an excellent pool, and that shows, at least me as a board member, that we have an engaged, caring community who also agrees that our kids come first and they'll do anything they can to help. This takes a lot of work and effort. And that was a second question that they asked, is how many hours do you put in to be a board member? It could be as low as 2 to 5 or upwards of 30. It just depends. And in these past 7 months, each and every one of us has given as much time as we can to this because we know it's owed to the people that we care about most. And these are the things that we discussed that we used in consideration when choosing Mr. Reedy. Mr. Reedy, is there anything you would like to say to the community?
Mr. Syracuse, I had that exact same question, and I had thought about that, and during the interview process, I had brought that actual comment up. And the perception that the three of us ran together, there was one of the moments when we had our speaking community meetings with people prior to the election, that came up. Somebody had asked us, are you three running together? Are you campaigning together? There were people that asked if I was campaigning with Stacy as well, because another community member supported her and I together. And I kind of got clumped together with people that I wasn't running with or against. I was running for the kids. And because of my 3 children, I was trying to share as much as I could in the 6 minutes that we were given to talk about what do we believe in. And I didn't think that 6 minutes was fair to express my 50 years of experience and things like that. It just so happened that there were 2 people in the community promoting myself and Ms. Bear, and another person in the community that was promoting the 3 of us because we were that individual's 3 choices. And as it got put out in the public, the appearance was that we were together. And perception is your reality. And so that bothered me, that I was kind of being lumped in with everybody instead of me on my own merits. I tried to fix that throughout the election and campaigning process, but I understand your concern. We were not running together, just to clarify that again. So I hope that that answers your question. When they discussed who they were going to elect, Ms. Baird did share with me, look, you were not our first choice, and I'm okay with that. I just want the best person. I want the best people up here on the board to represent the students and the staff. That's the most important. And if I didn't get selected, I would have been okay with that as well. I do hope that we can earn your trust. Again, I know you said that you feel that you can't trust the board anymore. I hope that we can, through our actions, rebuild and regain your trust. I hope that the community, the students, the staff, as you get to see me in action up here, or however, talk to me or anything like that, I hope that I can gain your trust as well as I did the members on the board prior to my being here. Public service is public trust. Been a federal employee my whole adult life. And I hope that I can show you that you can trust me to be the best board member selection up here. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Reedy. Any other comments? Did I leave anything out? Lastly, once again, we're going to fulfill the promise that we made discussed in our last meeting. We know that the process is imperfect. The 30 days is a state requirement. We do not get to change that within the policy. But can we build a better, more efficient practice? Yes. Are we going to work on it? Yes. We hope we don't have to enact it anytime in the near future, but we can give it to the next board or use it if and when necessary. So we are in a constant state of improvement, and every person on here has a growth mindset and knows that we are learning and we can only get better. With that, starts our debrief for the selection process. Was there anything else for board discussion today? Okay, we'll move on to item 5A, approval. We have many minutes, stick with us on this. Item 5A, approval of minutes from August 8th, 2022. Do I hear a motion to approve item 5A?
Madam President, I will make a motion to approve item 5A, approval of minutes of August 8th, 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Roskis. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Menzer. The floor is open. Mr. Tarnello?
Mr. Roskis,
Yes.
Mrs. Menser,
Yes.
Mrs. Bear,
Yes.
Mr. Reedy,
Yes.
Mr. Boxler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Moving on to item 5B, approval of minutes from August 11th, 2022. Do I hear a motion to approve item 5B?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve item 5B, approval of minutes of August 11th, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Boxler. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Menzer. Floor is open. Mr. Tarnello?
Mr. Boxler,
Yes.
Mr. Reedy,
Yes.
Mr. Roskis.
Yes.
Mrs. Menser,
Yes.
Mrs. Bear.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Moving on to item 5C, approval of minutes of August 15th, 2022. Do I hear a motion to approve item 5C?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve 5C, approval of minutes of August 15th, 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Menzer. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I will second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Floor is open. Mr. Tarnello?
Mrs. Bear,
Yes.
Mrs. Menser,
Yes.
Mr. Roskis.
Yes.
Mr. Reedy,
Yes.
Mr. Boxler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Moving on to item 5D, approval of minutes August 17th, 2022. Do I hear a motion to approve item 5D?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve item 5D, the approval of minutes of August 17th, 2022.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Menzer. Floor is open. Mr. Tarnello?
Mrs. Menser,
Yes.
Mr. Reedy,
Yes.
Mr. Boxler,
Yes.
Mr. Roskis.
Yes.
Mrs. Bear.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Moving on to 5E, approval of minutes of August 22nd, 2022. Do I hear a motion to approve item 5E?
Madam President, I will make a motion to approve item 5E, approval of minutes of August 22nd, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Menzer. Floor is open. Mr. Tarnello?
Mr. Reedy,
Yes.
Mr. Boxler,
Yes.
Mr. Roskis.
Yes.
Mrs. Menser,
Yes.
Mrs. Bear.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Moving on to item 5F, approval of minutes August 24th, 2022. Do I hear a motion to approve item 5F?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve 5F, approval of minutes of August 24th, 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Menzer. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second.
Thank you. Floor is open. Mr. Tarnello?
Mrs. Bear,
Yes.
Mr. Reedy,
Yes.
Mr. Boxler,
Yes.
Mr. Roskis.
Yes.
Mrs. Menser.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Last but not least, moving on to item 5G, approval of minutes of August 25th, 2022.
Madam President, I will make a motion to approve item 5G, approval of minutes of August 25th, 2022.
Thank you very much. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that motion.
Thank you very much. Floor is open. Mr. Tarnello?
Mr. Boxler,
Yes.
Mr. Reedy,
Yes.
Mr. Roskis.
Yes.
Mrs. Menser.
Yes.
Mrs. Bear.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Tarnello?
All right. That was a lot of minutes. Anyway, 6A, the monthly financial reports for August 31st, 2022. We did get our second half real estate collections. We would typically expect to see 48% of our revenues come in the second half. With 52% in the first half, that is, some people typically like to pay the whole property tax in the first half. However, we currently only have 50% of our revenues instead of 48% because the total number is lower because we cannot assume we will collect the revenue from the November renewal levy. So you can never assume that a levy will pass, so should it pass, it will be added back into that number in November. So I want to point out that that number is reflective without that renewal levy. The First Energy for the power plant in Eastlake did pay their delinquent payment from the last 2 years. This was a total of $1.3 million to the general fund for a 2-year period of time. This is not found money. Rather, this is money that the district was owed and they finally paid. So they were arguing their valuation was different. They were short paying the district. The county, and the city had to pay attorneys to fight their valuation. And then they finally agreed to pay their valuation. And then they turned back around and filed again on this year. So we get to make attorneys very happy once again.
Mr. Charnello, just a question. So why can they say, no, we're not going to give you the money that you're owed?
Well, they really can't, which is why we have to, they challenged it through the Board of Revisions, and then through that process is when attorneys get involved. And they present their facts, we present our facts, and it happens every year. Ever since they converted what kind of power plant it was, they've been trying to say it's worth less. So they're just trying to pay less.
Okay.
So, but it's an ongoing thing every year. Like I said, they settled for tax year 19 and 20, and they just refiled on tax year 21.
Okay.
So we're back into it again.
Thank you.
So it's unfortunate. In general, our revenue is where we expect them to be. Heading into the school year from the second half collections, we have collected 40.5% of our revenues to date through about 16.7% of the year. So we are primarily funded through property taxes. So that's why you see a large influx of our revenues, in the July-August timeframe for the second half property tax collection, and the February timeframe for the first half collection. On the expenditure side, we are slightly behind primarily due to timing of invoices coming in and getting paid. Some of this has to do with supply chain issues. Services and supplies just aren't coming in as quick as we'd like to see them. We bought those couple buses that we talked about in April, and they're saying we might not get them till November. So it's just how things are going. We've had vendors that just couldn't get to us and do projects a year out. It's pretty crazy right now, the shortage of everything. Hopefully it comes back to normal pretty soon, but because of that, our expenditures are lagging a little bit. However, like I said, a lot of it has to do with timing of when things are coming in. And then interest rates continue to rise, good for earnings opportunities, bad for everything else. 6B, athletic event workers revised pay schedule. This is for $10 increases from the previous year for officials. This is for football officials, so this is in alignment with the conference fee schedule. 6C, transfer of funds. This is to transfer $373.24 from the South High School class of 2022 to the South High School class of 2023. So we're just rolling the money over from last year's graduating class to this year's class. 6D is a grant acceptance. This is a $1,000 donation from the Vail Foundation for entrepreneurship activities for the students at NCI Willoughby. And the donation portion there's a donation portion of this in 6H. However, we would like to thank this foundation in advance for providing that money to these students. Letter E, establishment of a new account. This is the Willoughby Middle School Makerspace Club. This is a new club. This would allow students to be able to fundraise and then purchase items to go back into their makerspace. So they would like the opportunity to fundraise and generate some funds to buy more things for their makerspace. 6F, purchase orders. These are instances where invoices were dated/ordered prior to the purchase order being in place. Some of these were items that were invoiced late, and the purchase order was already closed. As you can see, one of them was for tuition back in May of 2022. So that was a while ago in last school year, and then that invoice just showed up. So that, being over the $3,000, required board approval. 6G, student activity accounts. These are normally monthly items. A club account needs to have a purpose and goal statement in order to fundraise and spend money. So if you see a new fiscal '23 purpose and goal statement, that's what that is. If they're making revision to their budget because they're doing something different or their fundraiser is costing a little bit more or they're generating more money, you'll see something such as a fiscal '23 budget only change. So anything that the student activity groups are doing come through as a board agenda item. Lastly, 6H, gifts and donations. First, we have the Rebels family. They donated $300 to South High School. The Milestone Athletic Club donated school supplies that were distributed to all district buildings for this school year. The Maroos Brothers Construction Company donated school supplies that were distributed to all district buildings for this school year. The Willoughby-Eastlake Class 5 Professionals Union donated $4,543.52 to various 018 fund accounts. These are pupil or the principal pupil activity accounts, and that is throughout the district for student needs. The School of Innovation PTO donated $6,630 to the School of Innovation. And the South Athletic Boosters donated $300 to the South High School. So thank you to those all those kind, generous organizations.
Just want to take a minute as a board to truly thank each organization for contributing and for helping. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I really do. Our schools desperately need these things. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Charnello. Mr. Murphy.
Well, before I start with the item A, I just want to take a moment to thank our entire staff for all their hard work and dedication to get us up and running for the 22-23 school year. It takes a tremendous amount of effort and people and so many hands in to get us going, and from our administrative staff, our teaching staff, our support staff, our secretarial staff, bus drivers, our custodians, our cafeteria workers, our aides, are just so many people, and it's been a really good start to the school year, and I just want to thank them all for their efforts because couldn't do it without them, so appreciate them very much.
Mr. Murphy, that can be better said. Thank you very much. We see you in the back and up front. Thank you.
Okay, well, the first item for consideration, item A, ESC of the Western Reserve Addendum, and that is an item to increase the number of days for one of our physical therapists based on the needs of the district. And of course, they serve our students. Our therapists are hired through the ESC of the Western Reserve.
Sorry, I needed a sip. Do I hear a motion to approve item 7A, ESC of the Western Reserve Addendum?
Madam President, I will make a motion to approve item 7A, ESC of the Western Reserve Addendum.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Spencer. The floor is open. Hearing no discussion, Mr. Charnello?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Reedy?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Menser?
Yes.
Mrs. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Item B for your consideration is the ESC of Northeast Ohio, the other ESC that we work with, just for those keeping track at home. But for an inter-district service area contract. And basically what that is a contract for one of our assistant principals. We ran that contract last year through the ESC and decided for consistency purposes that we would do that, in fact, again this year for the same candidate.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I hear a motion to approve item 7B, ESC of the Northeast Ohio Inter-District Service Area Contract?
Madam President, I will make a motion to approve item 7B, the ESC of Northeast Ohio Interdistrict Service Area Contract.
Thank you, Mr. Boxler. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Menzer. Floor is open. Mr. Tarnello?
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Menzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Bear?
Yes.
Mr. Reedy?
Yes.
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Item C for your consideration is a teacher professional organization agreement. This item is regarding the supplemental pay for the president of the teachers union, WIDA. And this contract is an agreement between the teacher in the district and the NEOEA, which is a state organization for the teachers. The district would be reimbursed for those funds by NEOEA.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I hear a motion to approve item 7C, Teacher Professional Organization Agreement?
Madam President, I will make a motion to approve item 7C, Teacher Professional Organization Agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I will second the approval for the teacher professional organization agreement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reedy. The floor is open. Would just like to acknowledge that Mr. McPhee is present tonight. Thank you very much. It's okay if that's why you came. We offer this for your streaming viewing from home pleasure. But thank you very much for what you do on behalf of the teachers of our district. Mr. Tarnello?
Mrs. Bear?
Yes.
Mrs. Menzer?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mr. Reedy?
Yes.
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Item D and also item E for your consideration, and I'll just kind of give my explanation together because they're very similar. They're agreements, MOUs with two different universities that we, Baldwin Wallace and Cleveland State. The district often engages with these partners and works with them to place college students in our classrooms. These students fill the role of student teacher and sometimes work to fulfill field experience hours as well. It's important to note that all students working in this capacity are vetted according to district policies. We feel fortunate to have these partners and to be able to engage with young people in the field of education. And it also, on a side note, gives us that firsthand opportunity to turn around and hire them once they graduate and if they've shown that they would be a good fit in our district. So we've been fortunate to enjoy that partnership with them over the years. And then item F for your consideration is our agreement with Family Pride of Northeast Ohio. This agreement applies to the adult students that are educated in our healthcare programs, specifically at NCI Eastlake. Funds used for this service will come from the CARES Act funding and not from general funds. And the money will be used to employ mental health provider from Family Pride. This person will work with our adult students 1 day per week. Item G for your consideration is a special service agreements. There are several in here, so I'll go through them. First off is the agreement with the ESC of Northeast Ohio for students that require specialized audiology services. The second agreement with the ESC is to cover the cost of mental health services that are completed by Crossroads with our students that are in a day treatment program specifically. This is not the same as the Crossroads contract that we have for services in our buildings. The third contract is with Maxim Healthcare Services, and that item addresses the support nursing care required by a student in the district specifically. And finally, the contract with PSI is for healthcare workers that are in our school clinics each day. Item H for your consideration is, this is something we do annually. It is a list of bus stops that are in place for the school year. And it is something else when you look at that list of how many stops we make as a district. It's tremendous. But that is something that we do annually. Item I for your consideration is the Performing Arts Center rental fees and guidelines. And this agreement allows the district to use the Performing Arts Center as a for-profit asset when it is not in use. We have adjusted the pricing to align with other theaters in our area so that we can offer a high-quality, cost-effective facility to those interested in renting our theater. And so when we took a look at the pricing, we wanted to make sure that we were aligned with our competition, if you will, so that we didn't price ourselves out of the market. So we made some recommendations for adjustments there. Item J for your consideration is the policy adoption of policy 0168. This policy has been discussed prior board meetings to establish clear guidelines for filming our board meetings. In order to become an official district policy, it has to be read at 2 board meetings. This is the second read, and once this item has been voted on, it can then become policy.
Mr. Murphy, I just want to make mention here, there's been a few questions from the community. When will we start live streaming and posting special meetings? That'll begin after today because the policy become effective, which means all meetings moving forward will be live streamed and recorded for the community. The only meetings that are not subject to this would be executive session. So every meeting of the board will now be visible to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item K for your consideration is a parent-guardian transportation agreement revision. In certain circumstances, such as when a parent transports their child to a private school, parents are entitled to repayment for mileage. The payment amount is set by the state of Ohio. Each time a student is added to the list for reimbursement, it must be voted on by the Board of Education, and this particular item falls in that category. Item L for your consideration is the personnel agenda. And when there are changes to district personnel, such as retirement, leaves of absence, new hires, staff members hired for supplemental contracts, or a resignation, they must be voted on, of course, by the board. This is our monthly list of personnel changes, and they have been vetted through our policies and procedures.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. We'll now move on to item 8A for meeting notification. If I click on it. The next regular board meeting of, the next regular Board of Education meeting is scheduled for Monday, October 10th at 7 p.m. at the Administration Building at 35353 Curtis Boulevard in Eastlake, Ohio. And we'll now move on to item 9A, which is our consent calendar. Do I hear a motion to approve item 9A, adoption of consent calendar?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve 9A, adoption of consent calendar.
Thank you, Ms. Menzer. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I will second that.
Thank you. And just prior to voting, Mr. Tornello, just an indication, there was a lot of items on the agenda tonight with an asterisk next to them. As of right now, when we vote, we are voting to approve every item with an asterisk. Any other discussion? Mr. Tornello?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Reedy?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Menser?
Yes.
Mrs. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
We'll now move on to item 10A, other business, adjourn to executive session. Do I hear a motion to adjourn to executive session?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to adjourn to executive session.
Thank you, Ms. Menzer. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I will second that motion.
Prior to voting, there'll be no action taken by the board after the executive session this evening. We wish you all a wonderful night. Mr. Tarnello?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Reedy?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Menser?
Yes.
Mrs. Bear?
Yes.
We're in executive session at 8:08 p.m.
Thank you. Wishing you all a safe and wonderful evening.